Welcome to Lugal's world. Today we're going to be covering the eclipse and looking at Israel's birth chart and what's going to be happening here. So, for all you people interested in Israel, whether it's end times or you live there or wherever, this is super relevant. And yeah, so Isaac, tell us what's going on with Israel this eclipse season, because we know America is so tied to Israel. So,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so for those who don't know, the birth chart for Israel is set for 14th of May 1948 for 4 p.m. Tel Aviv time. So that's a pretty well-established sort of agreed upon time. So so we'll sort of go with that one. And what it does, it places the sun in tropical Taurus. And we have the moon in tropical Leo as well. So this sort of, and that's in the 10th house. So a sort of Leo moon in the 10th house is someone who, a reputation for being on the world stage is one way you might want to put that. The idea of Leo being the performer and then the 10th house being reputation, how we're seen, sort of our level of visibility. And then in the 10th house of reputation, we also have some pretty spicy stuff. We have a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So that is a very intense reputation, we might say, with Pluto in the 10th house. That's always the first thing that sort of comes to me, seen, built to, made to have positions, to hold positions of power. And with Saturn there, it's a slow burn and there's trials and there's tribulations. Pluto Saturn is the most intense, most transformative tests that one can go through. And having that in the 10th house is going through those tests very visibly, very publicly, and having your reputation in the world tied to that as well. Wow. So a lot of very intense, tense and difficult, I guess, energy in the 10th house of reputation. That's definitely one of the main framings I see in the Israel chart. And so they're the main places. We have a few other things as well. So it is Libra rising. So very much concerned with the idea of justice and relationships and the idea of what is, harmony, peace on the world stage, again, with those planets in the 10th house. So we can see that Libra energy there. And then we have Neptune in the 12th house in Libra as well, adding to that energy, that spiritual, a highly spiritual energy, or religious energy even. There's a lot of that tied into the Israel. Got 2 planets in the 9th house, which is to do with religion and spirituality typically as well. So yeah, a few very key placements. Just one thing I want to point out, because we are coming up to the eclipse, very, very close now. It is a Chiron eclipse. Chiron will be exactly conjunct the sun and the moon when the sun is eclipsed by the moon. So that's a very sort of, that's a key part of what's going on in the world and the energies that we'll all be feeling personally as well. So Israel has Chiron in their 1st house, which is a wounding, a deep wound, a deep sense of trauma to do with self, to do with identity, to do with who someone is. And it's in Scorpio, tropical Scorpio, so there's a deep emotional intensity to it. But we'll see Chiron is actually 6 degrees, 5 degrees conjunct the south node, K2, the south node of the moon, which is to do with, we might call it karma, baggage, what we take in with us and what we're seeking to leave behind. So we've got Chiron sort of right near the south node. It's like this wounding of the self with this karmic energy sort of pulling it down. And in the 1st house, again, so this is all happening in the 1st house. So central to the identity of this country or this nation and who they are is this wounding of the self, and tied to sort of past, tied to baggage. So there's a lot of very powerful, difficult things that you're looking at this as a person, as a birth, that this person would have to go through in their life. And it probably is better to actually look at these things as a person, as an individual, because this is how astrology works. It works in the same way. It gives this imprint, this sort of cosmic imprint to anything that is started, that is initiated at that point in time. So yeah, there's a few there's a few starting things looking at the tropical chart, and things get really, really good when we look at sort of turn sidereally and look at some of the fixed stars. And when we start to see this play out, it's hard not to see the exact timing of the creation of this entity as highly deliberate, or definitely a lot of synchronicities were hit by this exact timing. So I'll put up here a chart showing the main fixed stars, and you'll see how many of the key fixed stars, these stars which have been acknowledged throughout time across cultures and civilizations and different.
I want to say something that I found when I was younger in fundamentalism.
Yep.
When there's all those genealogies in the beginning of the Bible, and you add up the years from Adam to Abraham, and you get 1,948 in those genealogies.
Nice. Wow. So there's some heavy syncing going on with this time, with this date, with this year, for sure. Thanks for adding that. So let's look at a chart. There's basically 4 fixed stars, 4 of the most prominent fixed stars, in ancient astrology that are hit almost exactly by this chart. So we have Speaker, which is, I guess, the bright, beautiful star in the middle of Virgo, the constellation of Virgo, the maiden, basically exactly conjunct their ascendant. So they've hit the ascendant almost exactly on Spica, and Spica is one of the best, most powerful, most beautiful energies of the fixed stars, you might say, and they've hit that sort of dead on with the exact time of the ascendant. We can sort of look elsewhere as well. Mars. So Mars is in their 11th house, and it's conjunct to 1 degree Regulus, so the ruling star. So this is an interesting placement. So Donald Trump also has this placement very closely. His Mars is, I think, 4 degrees from Regulus, but also 4 degrees from his ascendant, which is exactly conjunct Regulus. So interesting that we do, Trump has a very aligned role with the nation of Israel as well. So they've got that Mars, that sort of Mars Regulus link in there, which is really interesting. But this is a very powerful Mars as well. So, let's look at that as a significant aspect, Mars on Regulus. And then we also have Mars trined by Jupiter, almost exact trine. And Mars Jupiter is it's like holy war, or going to battle for higher beliefs. And this really close, so you see how much harmonized energy there is towards this idea of crusading and holy wars and fighting for a spiritual or religious belief. Very strong. But then the Mars is also square to the Sun, which is in the 8th house. So Sun in the 8th house is sort of to do with difficulties, problems, sort of more underworld issues, you might say. So Sun 8th house square Mars in the 11th house. When you think Sun Mars, there's a lot of courageous energy, a lot of leadership energy with Sun and Mars. So obviously both, we think of fire with both of them, the ruler of Aries and the ruler of Leo. So a lot of fire energy, a lot of determination, a lot of drive, a lot of willpower, a lot of internal inspiration, the ability to lead. But there's a friction there with the square. And so Sun Mars with the square can be too bright, too much of this, too much courage or leading or wanting to do stuff. We also see this sort of father-son dynamic with the Sun and Mars as well. And we think in terms of like religious, the father-son dynamic is at the heart of Israel, isn't it? This idea about a spiritual relationship with the Father and with the Son and with the Spirit. It's very much there. It's interesting to see how this plays out in the astrology as well. So the power, this is, an incredibly powerful Mars placement, about as powerful as one can imagine. It's also hitting a set style to Uranus as well. So there's a spontaneity, there's a ability to channel into a sort of a liberative, revolutionary energy as well to drive these holy battles, these holy crusades. Yes, so again, a lot going on there. And then we also have our polyps in Gemini exactly conjunct the midheaven as well. If you want to get a better idea about the character of these fixed stars, our friend Julian at Olympus Astrology does a lot of really good videos about the fixed stars and their interpretation in ancient astrology. So definitely recommend go checking him out as well. And then we also have Mercury as well, conjunct to 1 degree Aldebaran, which is the red eye of Taurus, and again a very well-regarded fixed star, a very fortunate, powerful fixed star in ancient astrology as well. And so yeah, and again, this is also very powerful Mercury that Israel has as well, very close trine to Neptune. And so Mercury-Neptune is this very, you can speak in a very transcendent, uplifting, magical way, you might say. Yeah, so a lot of, if we look at bringing the ancient astrology, there's some incredibly powerful placements just in their birth chart that Israel as a nation has. So you can see right there how that reflects the way that they go about, the way that they operate in the world, for better or for worse. It's a very prominent role. It's a very powerful role. It's a very spiritual / religious role. I guess you can see it fundamentally tied in to that. So and then let's sort of bring that now to the eclipse and have a look at some of the things that might be going on in terms of their transits at the moment, and how that how we can sort of start to maybe make some predictions about where Israel will be moving into the future, and see what happens there. So a few things I want to point out. So we look at their progressions. So look at one of our previous videos if you want to understand what progressions are. Essentially, it's the planets moving from the time of birth, and every day after the birth, so the sun will move 1 degree each day. If we take that time in someone's birth chart, moving 1 day forward, that actually equates, it almost maps out their life, 1 year of their life. So every day on from our birth, as the planets move, that corresponds to 1 year in our life. So after we saw with Donald Trump's chart, after 70 years, the sun had moved on 70 degrees in his chart. After 70 years, it crossed over his ascendant, which was conjunct Regulus, and that was the exact year in his life that he rose to become president of America. So you can see how the progression of his sun, after 70 years, 70 degrees matched exactly his rise to ultimate power. So that's one example. So if we look at Israel's progressions chart, so again, they're only be about 2 years younger than Donald Trump, actually, wouldn't they? Because I think Trump was born in 1946 from memory. So a lot of these alignments are similar. But what we see, so their sun has moved forward approximately almost 80, so 70 to 75 degrees, so 75 years, 75 degrees on. And what we see now is their sun is right over their natal moon. So we actually have this sun-moon conjunction, which we would call a new moon. That is essentially what a new moon is, when the sun and the moon conjunct. So in their progressions chart, Israel actually has this new moon alignment. And a new moon is also if the sun and the moon are aligned, if the nodes of the moon are aligned with the sun, this will be a solar eclipse as well. So we can actually see what potentially could be a solar eclipse in the chart of Israel's progressions right now. So straight away we can see an archetypal link between these progressions charts and our current time, which is a solar eclipse, which is the moon eclipsing the sun.
Wow, so
it's very powerful.
Israel is synced up to the United States.
Synced up to the United States, but synced up to to this eclipse. That's how I would see it as well. But definitely synced up to the US as well, because this is a fundamentally United States eclipse because of the path of totality over America for sure. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. So that's the main thing that sort of stood out in this. So with that, let's look at their transit. So this is the natal chart in the middle, and then the current positions of the planets as they correspond on the zodiac to their natal placements. So a few things to have a look at exactly here. So the eclipse itself will be occurring in the 6th house, but quite close, almost 4 degrees away from the descendant of Israel. So again, a lot of this idea about moving towards the 7th house to do with relationships, to do with contracts, honoring contracts or breaking contracts, or this sort of thing. This is sort of where the eclipse is taking place, just approaching at the end of the 6th house, approaching the line of the descendant. So again, seeing this reinforced, but with the 6th house, we do see issues come up. You know, in a natal chart, 6th house is to do with enemies. Enemies is one thing that often comes up, and then also health issues, so like disease, ill health. These are typical things which are expressed in the 6th house, and it's why the 6th house and the 8th house in particular are considered to be two of the hardest, or the most, where most of life's difficulties will manifest, is the 6th house and the 8th house. So again, not ideal, but also again, like a heavy relationship focus coming out there with this eclipse as well, I'll also say. Then we have Mars, Saturn in the 5th house. There's this sort of like pulling back, restraining, a bit of a grinding to a halt vibe is in their 5th house, which isn't too bad. So the 5th house is the house of good fortune. So they might not experience that sort of slowdown in too harsh of a way, which is good because there are a few other things going on as well. Pluto, currently in tropical Aquarius, is making an opposition to their natal moon. So the moon is in the natal 10th house, and Pluto is currently in Israel's 4th house. So we have a 4th house, 10th house polarity between Pluto and moon, which is again a very polarizing emotional state. So intensely fluctuating, polarizing emotions, and Pluto in the 4th house is uprooting things to do with roots, past, culture, ancestry, lineage. Pluto comes in the 4th house and just brings up all the issues sort of dwelling there and brings them up to the surface. Consciously, when that's channeled, it's a cause for transformation, but it can bring up ugly things as well. So this is, Pluto 4th house is a difficult transit in terms of bringing up very personal things, and the airing of dirty laundry maybe is also one way to look at that as well. And so that's an intense polarity that Israel's going through at the moment. And then we have Jupiter. Uranus will be right on the cusp of the 7th and 8th houses, and it will be about 1 degree, 2 degrees away from their natal sun. So we have this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction within 2 degrees of Israel's natal sun. So 8th house. So again, problems, difficulties dealing with underworld issues, often to do with money, but in terms of not someone else's money and being reliant on other people's money. So it's interesting, Sun in the 8th house could be seen as a individual who does need to rely on other people's money to be able to do what they need to do. And so I wonder, with Jupiter Uranus very close to this Sun, we see some sort of reckoning with how Israel is using other people's money. Because this is the Jupiter Uranus will be happening in Taurus, which is to do with finances. And so again, like Sun 8th house Taurus, a lot of finances, but problematic experiences with finances and needing to be reliant on other people's finances rather than your own. So that's a very interesting placement. And so I'd just be wary about April 20 is that Jupiter Uranus conjunction, something to do with really activating that 8th house Taurus Sun for Israel there. So there are some of the main things that came out. We hopefully in the future we can do a more looking forward video, so maybe the next 100 days or so, to try and look at that and how that might play out going forward as well. But that's a pretty good starting point, I think.
Yeah, sounds good. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please consider becoming a member of our Patreon, and you can learn how the eclipse is going to affect you in the next 100 to 4 years. We thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing. We also have done a video where you can see what sign is affected by every single eclipse. What the opposite of that. So please check out our other offers here. Have a beautiful evening and stay safe. Peace.